Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. I'm Will Lopez along with Caleb Newquist here, who's so saucy, Ragu keeps trying to put him in a bottle. We're live working from home at Gusto, and you are on the margins. Caleb, I want to confess that I've still not done my taxes yet, and I know the deadline's approaching.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, there's still time. I mean, let's see, today's the 27th and the deadline, like you got 3 weeks. Will, come on. There's a frantic accountant out there for you, Will. I promise you.
Well, you're looking at him.
Every last, yeah. No, but I mean, someone that will do the tax returns for you. I forget. Did we talk about this? Do you still do your own taxes?
We did talk about this, and I still do my own taxes, which is why I'm still frantic. Like I still feel like I'm owning my practice, except I'm the only client of my own practice. So yeah, I need to jump on the ball here. It's
so are you going for the extension? The question is, are you extending or are you not extending?
I will probably most likely extend.
All right. So just send it in.
Just get it in there.
Then you can come down like just one notch down from where you're currently at, wherever that is. It feels like it feels like you're at an 11. So you could just come down to 10 and you'd be all right.
Yeah. I mean, maybe I'm just overthinking it. Well, if you're overthinking it, I'd love to hear whether or not you've actually filed your tax returns in the chat. If you're joining us live on YouTube, drop in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. If you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, thank you so much. Follow us on LinkedIn, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us or join us on Facebook. We'd love to have you part of the daily conversation, and join us every other Tuesday where Caleb and I get to do this live in front of you for your tax season entertainment on a bi-weekly basis. We have a special extended tax season, I might add. Yeah, if you fall in that camp, I'll fall in it with you. So, but yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Caleb, we have a pretty jam show today. We have a special guest that will join us for both segments, which is exciting.
That is exciting. I'm sure people know who it is, but
well, if you don't know who it is, it's
Greg
Kyte.
Reveal. Well, yeah, okay, so there it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's all part of the social media promotion, right? His lovely face.
Right. Yeah, it isn't. It isn't like The Masked Singer, which is a show I've never watched, but I understand there's some revealing.
Totally. And real quickly, the two segments that we're going to try to touch on today, which I think is just great. A segment on ethics, I believe, right? We're going to hit that a little bit.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then the other segment is fraud. Yeah. Two great juxtaposed segments.
Whoa. If I may walk you back just a bit, we're going to talk about timesheets.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Timesheets and value pricing. And then fraud and ethics in segment 2.
Who does timesheets anymore? I'm curious.
Well, we're going to find out. We're going to find out.
Chat.
Greg is part of a crusade to bayonet every last timesheet that is out there, and I'm only slightly exaggerating about the bayonets.
So the bayonet will go right into your laptop at this point.
That's right. Yeah, like I feel like there's weapons involved, from my understanding.
Well, let's do that. Let's go into our first segment, our wonderful special report with Greg Kyte.
All right. So yeah, our guest is
I'm coming to you live from Orem, Utah, and I'm here to say that the raccoon on Masked Singer was Danny Trejo. No one saw it coming. Everyone was surprised, and the singing was marginal at best.
Thank you so much for that special report.
Back to you in studio.
Oh, God. Well, if you don't know who Greg is, now you know, in full flair, founder of a Comedy CPE. Caleb, you go way back with Greg, right?
Yeah, we were first became acquainted back in my Going Concern days when we really couldn't even find people we couldn't even pay people to write on Going Concern, except for Greg. Greg was one of the people that we did pay, and one of the few. I mean, we really tried throwing a lot of money around at people, and they didn't want to do it. But Greg was desperate enough that he became part of the family, part of the team. And Greg, those were good times.
They were. I'm gonna have to say that for going concern, I earned framed picture money is what I got. So it was huge.
Oh.
And I'd like to say I was discovered by you, Caleb.
I was, yeah. I think that's right. At least within the small world of accounting celebrity, pseudo celebrity, right?
Yeah. Pseudo quasi.
Right. So Greg, we decided we had avoided you long enough on this show, and so that we decided to, and we thought we'd bring you on because you have a couple of webinars. You and I do webinars once a month, in fact. But Will Lopez pinch hit for me last month, on the ethics one. But you've got a couple of webinars coming up, and they're both interesting topics. And we thought, hey, this is perfect. Plus, we don't have anyone else to book, so let's get Greg on. And so this week you and I are doing a webinar about timesheets and how firms can run their businesses, run the business of an accounting firm without timesheets. And so I guess my question for you is, how did you get started on this particular crusade? Like, do you have like some past trauma associated with timesheets, or like, I'm just curious as like, what is the origin story of your because you're part of a cabal, I suppose, against timesheets. But so how did it start for you? I'm just curious how that happened.
Right. Well, I think that anyone who's been in a situation where they had to bill their time, where they did timesheets, I think everybody has a trauma story of timesheets, and I definitely do. It was a weird situation because I got hired at a mid-sized local accounting firm. I was hired as part of their QuickBooks Pro advisor team. Yet, I did not tell them that I had more experience with QuickBooks than I did. I had exactly zero experience with QuickBooks, and they said, "You're hired," and I was like, "Cool." And I got hired in June. And from June until January, I was doing everything that I could to like climb up the learning curve of QuickBooks with the sole goal of knowing slightly more than any of the clients that I was already being sent to help with their QuickBooks. And so I was just doing everything I could to try to figure out QuickBooks, but they said, "Hey, listen, you're not going to get enough billable hours to meet your annual goal just by doing the information technology side work that comes into our firm. So when tax season comes, everybody who's on our team instantly becomes a tax person as well." So then, end of January comes, I get pushed into the deep end of Ultra Tax, which I don't know if there's anyone at Ultra Tax who really tries to work on user experience with that program, because it is the least user friendly thing I've ever tried to do. And on top of that, the firm was trying to do this new thing where they're going, "I don't care how you've done it in the past," and me, I'm going, "I've never done any of this in the past." They go, "I don't care how you did it in the past. We're like some kind of like they were doing an interface where they imported everything from QuickBooks instead of doing it by hand. We got to learn how to do this year. We're doing it. So if any of you guys, we're going to kick your butt if you don't." And like they still hadn't even worked out the glitches with importing stuff from, this was 2000. What was this? This was busy season 2009 is when this was happening. And so I'm just trying to figure this stuff out. I'm horrible at taxes. It takes me forever. And so but I'm still, it's busy season. I'm begging people for like billable work. And finally the partner who's in charge of me pulls me into his office and he says, "Hey, listen, here's the deal. You are so slow at doing taxes that none of the partners want to give you any work. So I'm going to give you some because I'm a nice guy," is basically what he's saying. And my brain broke at that point. And I was like, "Wait a second. So you're saying that it's better for the firm for me to do zero work than to do some work just a little slower than you're expecting. And that was my trauma story for billable hour. And I quickly, as quick as I could, I bailed out of that firm. I got kind of worked the deal where I got hired away by a client. So I was not at the firm for long.
And
do you want me to tell more stories?
I was going to say, was that experience like 7 days that all of that happened, or was it like 3 months, 6 months?
It was all a bit like, seriously, I was just begging people for any, because I knew that I was going to miserably fail from what they wanted me to do for billable hours goals. So I was always trying to find more work. And I guess, I mean, if you want even the longer version of this whole story of how I got involved with VeriSage, which is kind of the group that is the anti-timesheets, anti-bill your time group. There was a couple of things that happened. I read an article in the Journal of Accountancy that Ron Baker wrote called Pricing on Purpose, where it talked all about how billable hours were horrible. And I was going, this is totally speaking to me. And I didn't have the courage to bring it to the managing partner to say, hey, I think this is something you could look into. I had fantasies of just like running past his office and like throwing the issue and trying to hit his desk, and hopefully it would just happen to open right to that article. But I was also writing, I had a period where I was writing some smart ass letters to the editor at the Journal of Accountancy as well. Oh. And one of which got published, and I was very proud of it. It was about our acronyms in the accounting profession. And then I wrote another one about an article about Six Sigma in the accounting profession. And so I sent the Six Sigma in, and like the next day I got a call from Ron Baker, who's like the value pricing guru. Right. And he was like, hey, I called about the article the letter to the editor that you sent into the Journal of Accountancy. And I go, oh, nice to meet someone who works for the Journal of Accountancy. And he's like, no. And I'm like, I just sent it in yesterday. How'd you get it if you don't work there? And they were like, they thought that I had put you up to writing this, like, because I guess he's also super anti Six Sigma. So they thought that he was like, hey, Greg, here's an article, say it's from you and send it into the Journal Accountancy. So they immediately sent it to him and like,
wait a minute.
What's up, Ron?
Wait a minute. So wait a minute. I just want to clarify something.
Yeah.
So Ron Baker, who, as you say, he's a founder of VeriSage. He's a big value pricing proponent, anti-timesheet. Like if this were the Crusades, he's like Richard III or something, right? Like, is that more or less right?
Yeah, I think that's
the Lionheart or
analogy.
Whoever,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But so you're telling me your first encounter with Ron Baker was that he called you?
Yes.
He called you on the phone and he said, "Hey, great letter to the editor. Do you want to?"
Yeah. Well, it was.
Do you want to join the crusade?
Do you want to join the crusade?
Yeah.
Take
it was
up
like
arms?
here's a sword, here's a shield, get on this boat. I mean, if we're going with the analogy of the crusade, the conversation went more, because I think Ed Kless, he's got like his right hand man is Ed Kless, and I think Ed might have actually even been on that call, but one way or another, like the definite vibe, and I think it was even explicit, where they were like going, hey, either you're brilliant and hilarious, or you're a total weirdo, and we're trying to figure out which is true. And
in either case, you're on board. You're part of the team.
Yeah, basically.
Like, we'll take you.
Basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's so interesting. So
go ahead.
Go ahead, Will.
I was just gonna say, like, so wait a minute. Like, you're on this crusade. Ron says, hey, great work. Pick up the shield and sword. But yet here we are, 2021, people are still doing timesheets. Like, what gives? What do you think is going on here?
Oh, great question. Here's the thing, is that it's not that the billable hour and timesheets don't work. The reason why people still use them is that, I mean, if you want to talk learning curves, timesheets are the easiest things to figure out. And they're embedded in our culture. It's so easy just to go, oh, this is what most people do, or this is what I've always done. And so we'll just keep doing it. And it seems like we're making plenty of money doing it this way. It seems like our firm culture is fine. It seems like people are thriving here. It's a time-tested way to run a firm. So let's just keep going with it. The problem that people see, that people don't see, is I think especially, well, people who rise. So if you rose to the level of partner in a firm that uses timesheets, then you're one of the people who was like, I'm fine with timesheets and I know how to play this game and I know how to play it right to rise to the top. So you probably have less of a trauma story with timesheets than other people. So you don't really have a problem doing it. The other thing, you can really timesheets, and Will, I think, or Caleb, I think we talked about this in the January webinar that we did. The timesheets, they end up having this thing that I call, this is my thing. This ain't a Ron Baker ripoff. This is a Gregism. This is a Gregism. It's the sweatshop effect, where if I'm paying my people, if I run a firm and I bill by the hour, I'm paying my staff a salary, but I'm pimping them out hourly. So my profits go up if I put the pressure on you to go and work a 60-hour week where you can bill all that time. And so the incentives are aligned, not for me to promote any kind of work-life balance for my staff, but instead to push them like hard to just go and work more time, which is why I think a lot of us, because I was 1 year at a firm and I bounced out and I've been in industry ever since. And I think a lot of us who've made the exodus out of public accounting into industry, we kind of go, oh my gosh, why does anyone stay at a firm? This is so much better out here.
Well, your old accounting firm missed the boat, because if you were really slow in doing work, I mean, that's like great revenue.
Right. Well, and see, here's the problem though, is that it was that firm, what they did, and this is the problem again with timesheets, is that they were giving their tax clients a fixed price, but they were still using timesheets to do the budget and the cost accounting. So they say, well, I think this tax return should take about 6 hours to complete. And here comes Greg after 10 hours going, hey, I'm almost done with your tax return. And they're like, oh, you burned, and again, even how they allocate profits and expenses among the partners that's where it makes a problem, where it's like, I just lost money on a tax return. It's like, well, you didn't though. You didn't, because you can't use timesheets to do cost accounting.
Let me ask you this. So you had a 1 year experience in a firm, and then you went to industry.
Right. I'd like to specify 2,003 hours at a firm.
Okay, perfect. Lovely. Okay. So 2,003 hours at a firm, and then you went to industry, and that's where you've been ever since. Yes. So you don't really have a dog in this fight. So that either tells me that you are a completely misguided person, or you really do, there's something deeper about this that you're just like, because you're evangelizing for getting rid of timesheets. You evangelize on value. You've been doing it for a long time. So like, what keeps you in it? Like, what is the thing that like just motivates you to share this story and share these ideas if it's such an uphill battle?
It's that it's ridiculous. Here's the thing.
It's the hilarity of the whole situation.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Exactly.
Tell me more.
It's like this. It's like Trevor Noah, he is the Daily Show, but he's not a U.S. citizen, but he covers U.S. politics constantly. He can't vote. He's not, I mean, I guess he's got some, but it's kind of similar to that, where it's like, it's a ridiculous thing. And it's so easy to take pot shot. Well, not even pot shots at it. It's easy to make fun of it constantly. And the thing that I have, it's not a dog in the fight, but it's a pony in the show, is that I'm part of the accounting profession, and this is a feature of the accounting profession. And a lot of what I bring to the accounting, apart from my day job that I do, a lot of what I do is I provide commentary, hopefully comedic, on our profession. And this is a never-ending source of, comedians find things that don't make sense that
Right.
people still do. I mean, that's a great source of material for us. So, and that was even what I did for Ron, because the first thing I started doing for Ron and for VeraSage is I started posting on the VeraSage website as Greg Kyte, the champion of the timesheet. So I would write these posts for him where I would go, listen, like one of the best, the ones that performed the best out of those posts is I was like, hey, listen, coming up, we've got the time change from standard time to daylight saving times where you fall back, and no, it was the other one. It was where you spring forward. Which one was it? It was one of them. I figured out the math. But anyways, I was like, so every year for this, we have our staff work overnight because the official changes at 2 a.m. and we can bill an extra hour, even though we don't actually work the hour, because the time change works in our favor for billing people more time. So why would you throw away that kind of revenue, Ron Baker? So that was, yeah. That and usually I would work myself into a hole that I couldn't get myself out of as the champion of the timesheet. So.
All right. Well, we got a couple minutes left in this segment. So Will, do you have a final question for Greg, or because I have something in mind, but like you go ahead if you've got something.
Oh, no, go for it.
Okay. So Greg, given that the absurd, so timesheets are absurd. Yes. That's the underlying thing. However, as we've pointed out, so many firms keep using them. So like, what is like, what do you think? Is it inertia? Is it fear? Is it like, so what is the underlying motivation? Is it the success that firms have had for such a long time? They don't think there's anything wrong with it, right? So there's some kind of like mental block happening here in our profession, right? And so I'm just curious of what you think about that and how you break through something like that.
Right. Well, and I think the biggest thing is anytime, change. And I think anyone who is going to give you an honest opinion about switching from time-based billing, from using timesheets to not using timesheets, if you're being honest, you will tell anyone who's considering that it is a lot of work. That's the switching costs involved in making that very fundamental change to how you run your firm. There's a lot involved in it. And what we see is that people are going, well, it's the whole idea that the pain of keeping the timesheets does not exceed the expected pain of making the switch to non-timesheets. And that's really the biggest problem, the biggest obstacle that we have from just seeing timesheets drop. Because again, I think you don't talk to anyone and they go, you know what I really love? My timesheets. I love
filling out timesheets,
filling it out, getting on my staff if they run a firm. What I really love is yelling at people because they haven't filmed out their timesheets in a timely manner. I've got
screwing over clients.
Yeah,
that's the best.
I know. I love it. It's my favorite. So it's not. So nobody likes it. But what they look at is they go, oh, making a change is going to be huge difficulty. I don't feel comfortable. That's one of the biggest things people don't like, especially accountants, because we like to root everything in this very numbers based. We can, how did you get this price? Well, let me tell you, here's some papers that document the hours, and we have an engagement letter that shows what our hourly rate is, and you do multiplication and you get it a price. And we're much less comfortable with going, no, that you're asking for something that's very high valued, so I'm going to charge you a high price. How do you feel about that? And then sitting uncomfortably with another human while they make a decision about whether or not they want to give you business. That's not something that people like. So so I would say, like I said, the pain of making the switch, I think, is perceived as greater than the pain that they think of sticking with the timesheet. So, and the billable hour model.
It all comes down to pain.
It all comes down to pain. And there's a webinar for you to just embrace the pain that Greg is delivering.
Well said.
Hey, Greg, before you run away, we're going to transition in our second segment. But there is that webinar that you can sign up right now. It's in the comments below. Would love to hear whether or not you're doing timesheets or what your thoughts are on timesheets. And we'll kind of like bring it up in the next segment. But if you're new to Gusto, and you want to expand your advisory services and offer clients more value, Gusto really is the people platform of choice. It's powered by People Advisory. We make it easy for accountants, bookkeepers to onboard, pay, insure, and advise their hardworking clients and teams when it matters most. And better yet, you can become People Advisory certified through the payroll industry's very first advisory certification program around payroll. So as a people advisor, you'll learn how to combine your financial expertise with people-focused guidance to better serve clients, hopefully on value pricing, not timesheets. You'll get great access to perks to support your clients and grow your firm. So partner with Gusto today and introduce your firm and your clients to better people operations and more at gusto.com/get certified. That's gusto.com/get certified. Hey, ethics. Who has them? I don't know. Do you have them, Greg?
Everybody's got them. They might just be bad. Is which really, that's one of the reasons why I love why I love teaching about ethics, is because it's such an accessible thing. Everybody talks about how horrible ethics CPE is, but I go, no, everybody, and I think a lot of times we maybe don't recognize the ethical choices that we're making in a very, very, micro level every day throughout our day. And that's what I like to look at. It's funny with a lot of ethics courses, a lot of ethics webinars, the ones that I've attended, not the ones that I've given. Sometimes I'm kind of shocked because they get into some interesting things. One ethics webinar I went to not too long ago, actually, it was out in Denver, of all places, where you guys are at. One of the presenters. So I was presenting at this all day kind of thing, and they had two of us do ethics, and I was the second ethics presenter. And the lady who went before, she was very good, very engaging. But she was talking about stuff like, hey, we've got self-driving cars, and if you've got self-driving cars, when that becomes ubiquitous and as this technology becomes greater, it's going to cause some ethical concerns. Like, for instance, if you're a self-driving car and you have, you're going to crash, is the car going to be smart enough to go, hey, do I turn into this minivan with a family and children in it, or do I turn into the moped with just one person on it? And it's like, okay, that's a very interesting ethical dilemma. But I also go, that's not where accountants live at all. So I mean, I guess it's going to help fulfill an ethics credit for anyone who needs it for their state board of accountancy, but I'm not sure if that's necessarily making us more ethical people as accountants. It's not necessarily helping us with our job. And so what I love to do is I love to look more at what I dive into with my ethics courses, and what really fascinates me is looking at the things that nudge ethical behavior. There's a behavioral psychologists and behavioral economists have done tons of studies where they go, okay, here's a place where people's ethics can be tested. What sort of circumstances can we put in there to either nudge them towards greater ethical behavior, not cheating, not lying, or what circumstances can we apply to this experiment that's gonna nudge them in the other direction? And that stuff I think is fascinating, and is endlessly applicable to the accounting profession and to what we do. So that's really the sweet spot for ethics for me.
What do you think? What is it about? What happens in your opinion? I mean, maybe you've read some stuff about this, but like, is it really as simple as the fraud triangle? Like if people have this ethical framework in their minds, like, oh, I know the difference between right and wrong, and like average stuff. And you talk about like the things that nudge people toward unethical behavior, and then eventually like full blown fraud. Like, it's usually a confluence of different factors, right? Or do you feel like some people, they don't really need that much help? Do you have a sense of like, what is it that make people break bad? Like, how does that happen?
Right.
Do you think?
Lots to unpack in what you just asked. I would say I have had people who have been offended at I I haven't seen it. It's harder to judge this on the webinars, but when I used to do back in the days when we could all get together as human beings in the same room, I'd do live ethics presentations, and some people would get seriously offended at what I'm saying, where it's like, yeah, every single person here has the potential in them to do some very unethical stuff, and these nudges are going to nudge, and they're like, nah, not me, which is funny because that's also a psychological bias, is that you're like, and I see it in me. I wish I could remember the name of the psychological bias, but it's the idea that you can study like things that psychologists have the science has determined true about human psychology, but we all go, yeah, that affects other people, but I'm smart enough, that doesn't affect me at all. Kind of like I feel that way about advertising. It's like, I coach commercials all day. It's not going to change my buying behavior. See something for like loaded tater tots at Chili's, and I'll be like, you know what sounds good? Some loaded tater tots at Chili's. So it does. It affects all of us, especially if it's loaded tater tots at Chili's. But so that's one thing, is that, yes, I think most people go ethics, schmethics. I'm a good person. I'm going to do the right thing. But the problem is that as human beings, ethics is always contextual. And I'm not saying contextual in terms of the circumstances that you find it in. I'm saying contextual in terms of socially contextual, where you're going to look. The biggest thing that people do to judge whether or not they're being ethical is they look around at the other people who are in whatever the same situation they are, that they're making their ethical decision in, and they're trying to go, am I being at least as good as everybody else who's in this little cohort? Am I convinced that I'm one of the better ones in this group? And as long as you're convinced that you're one of the better ones in this group, then you're fine. It's like if you're speeding down the freeway, if the out here in I-15 in Utah, it's 70 miles an hour till you get out into the boonies. But I'll sit there and go, I'm going 77, and somebody whips past me, and I go, I'm not speeding like that guy, so I'm one of the good ones, and it's really everything that we do is contextualized in terms of what we see other people doing. And so really, and that's one of the things we get into in the webinar, is how bad behavior is like contagious from one person to another. And what you're generally going to find is people will make assumptions about other people's bad behavior, and then they will rationalize, going back to the fraud triangle, they'll rationalize their own behavior by saying, well, at least I'm not doing it as bad as that guy's doing it. And that's where you get to. So yeah, fraud triangle, it's a thing, but I don't think people quite grasp the depths of the rationalization side of the whole thing.
What would you recommend? Like, obviously we did the ethics and fraud, or more like ethics webinar together.
Yeah.
I mean, so let's say you are in that cohort and you're watching right now and you're like, yeah, that's pretty much happening to me. What does one do to get out of that line of thinking, or like try to combat against the socialization of progressively or very slowly getting worse, or going from just bad ethics all the way to full-blown fraud?
Right. The biggest silver bullet that I got, and again, in the webinar that we do, I call them ethics hacks. One of the best ethics hacks. And again, none of these are like mind blowing, oh my gosh, I never thought of that before. But the biggest silver bullet for ethics is complete transparency, where you just have to, and I say, any way that you can do your work before a live studio audience is going to totally take the ethics out of it. For instance, let's say, here's a personal story from me. So I work in industry. I'm the in-house CPA for a group of medical office buildings. Weirdly enough, in the basement of one of the 3 buildings that I help manage, there's a self-storage unit. So I'm also a self-storage facility manager. I run a self-storage facility it's like a side hustle, but as part of my main job. It's the weirdest thing ever, but I do that. But here's the thing. I'm a one-man band for that. I do the whole thing by myself. I find customers, I set prices, I collect money. There's zero separation of duties. There's no oversight. I guess I can't technically write checks out of the checking account for that. But one of the big loopholes I saw on that was it's like, oh, if I've got customers who pay in cash, I could easily just go, yoink, thanks, pocket that money. And the owners would be none the wiser, and that'd just be tip money for Greg every day. I hope it goes without saying I've never done that, but at the same time, I also know from doing ethics stuff that if you're in a situation where you could be unethical for long enough, again, the psychological research says that eventually you're probably going to get worn down and you're going to make a bad decision at some point, and then it's hard to get out of that bad decision. So what I decided to do, there's two things I decided to do with this. One was to go to the owners and say, hey, I want to make sure you guys understand that we get cash payments here, and that it'd be the way we're set up. It would be extremely easy for me to steal the cash payments from you. Weirdest conversation to have with people, just going, hey, I 100% could screw you on some of your revenue that's coming in. But all of a sudden that puts it out there where it's like, this is a publicly known thing. And even putting a decision back on other people, going, knowing that risk and knowing me and knowing that you've got me here because you trust me. You're good with us still making cash payments. The other thing that I did along with that, and this was more of a downstream thing from going transparent with that, is I go, yeah, that's really uncomfortable to say that. And you know what? Cash payments are a big pain in the butt anyways. I can deposit checks remotely. I can't deposit cash remotely. I'd rather not take a half hour out of my day to run to the bank every time I get a cash payment so I just stopped. We curtailed taking cash payments. So the other thing about making any ethical problems that might exist public is that then you go, oh, there's ways to fix that. And here's the easiest way to do it, because nobody really has to pay with cash nowadays. Some people still prefer it, which I find odd, but you don't have to take them. And the peace of mind I have, the comfort level I have with that far outweighs any kind of additional business we would get from someone who's like, I really like a 5x10 storage unit, but I gotta pay cash for it. So that's just a story. Like I said, the best thing.
Well, you could have bought a lot of loaded tater tots from it, but
oh my gosh, yeah.
I mean,
I could have got the sour cream on them.
So, Greg, you've got next month you're doing a couple of case studies, fraud case studies, and what I like about those shows is like, or what those webinars is, you basically take the perpetrator of the fraud and you kind of tell the story around that person, and you say, hey, here's in hindsight, there's some pretty obvious red flags that were in this situation that led to this fraud. And so I guess what I'm interested, do you have a when you do those, do you find yourself drawn to a particular type of story, or what is it about the stories of fraud and kind of the ethical lapses that happen? Like what is most interesting to you about those?
I think the thing that's most interesting to me about a case is and unfortunately it's somewhat rare, is when the person who perpetrated the fraud kind of unfolds the story and really everything that happened to go from not being an embezzler or committing a fraud to doing, and obviously the bigger the fraud, the more interesting they are. That's one of the things, but also just seeing how things unfold and the process of the fraud triangle. Why was there opportunity for this person to commit fraud? What were the pressures? And one of the things when it comes to, I'm often surprised at how my own personal theory about the pressure side of the fraud triangle is that that's always there. you can't get that. You can't really get any of them to zero. Maybe the opportunity side you could get to zero, but you can't get the pressure side to zero. And some of the cases are really interesting when you've got somebody who maybe has a legitimate or semi-legitimate pressure that's like, it's like the thing where it's like, my family was starving, so I stole a piece of bread. The Les Mis story. And you go, Jean Valjean, you're okay, guy. We can sympathize with you. But then he goes, but then I got a job and I owned a bakery and we had plenty of bread, but I still decided to go and steal some anyways because I could. So I did. and it's interesting to see that stuff, that there's still fraud going on with that. But the biggest thing is like, is rationalization. And I guess maybe, while I'm kind of even processing this on the fly, part of it too, it's always very satisfying to me. And maybe this is my accountant side of the brain, where it's like, you learn stuff about what causes people to do fraud. And when you see a case and you go, oh yeah, check, there's what they taught me about that. Check, there's what they taught me about. Check. Oh yeah, it's all right there. And you can see it spelled out. That's always interesting. And just the human misery side of it. When somebody's caught and they're miserable in a just manner, I find a pleasure in that. I don't know. Is that Schadenfreude? Possibly.
You got it.
Slightly. So,
Will, the last question is yours, my friend.
Yeah, I was going to say, so Greg, with the webinar that you have coming up, tell us a little bit about just what you're covering in it.
In the upcoming Running Your Firm Without Timesheets one?
No, the other one, the fraud ethics one. And fraud. Yeah.
Okay. So we've got, so in just 2 days from now, we've got the timesheets one, Running Your Firm Without Timesheets, and so you specifically asked me not to talk about that one. But what's funny, I will, because we had a webinar in January where it's like timesheets are bad for people, and everybody, like the ubiquitous feedback we got from it was like, no crap, those are bad. Tell us how to do stuff without them. So the next one's like, oh, okay. So I was just preaching to the choir that timesheets suck. So here's one about how to run your firm without timesheets. But then the one after that is fraud. We're looking at the Steinhoff fraud, the largest fraud ever perpetrated on the continent of Africa. Steinhoff is like the Home Depot of Africa, and they had a massive financial statement fraud with that. We're also looking at the case, this hits very close to home as a comedian. Dane Cook, his half-brother was also his manager, and his half-brother managed to steal $3 million from him while he was his manager. So we're going to look at that as an embezzlement case. So that's next time. And then after that, so timesheets is this month. The fraud is in May. And then we're going to have a 1-hour ethics course in June that at this point, we haven't really nailed down the exact component of ethics that we're going to be looking at for the June webinar, but it's going to be every year in December for, I don't know, we've at least done it for a couple of years, Caleb, where we've had a 2-hour December ethics. And it's always funny because we always run out of time. So the idea was for these monthly or these quarterly 1-hour ethics things, we take one of the topics that we always want to explore deeper in our 2-hour ethics, but don't have the time to. And we're gonna delve deeper into that, kind of like what you and I did, Will, last time when we looked at the independence and objectivity and what those really mean in the context of what we do. So,
well, that's awesome. If anybody wants to follow you for more entertainment, where can they follow you on Twitter? What's your handle?
Everywhere. It's really easy. As long as you know that my last name is Kyte spelled wrong with a Y instead of an I. You can find, I'm just Greg Kyte on basically every platform. So Twitter's at Greg Kyte. LinkedIn is, Greg Kyte MBA CPA, because you don't have to be humble on LinkedIn. That's what my fortune cookie told me. So, so yeah, those are a couple good places to follow me.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. This was exciting. I mean, it just flew by the way.
And dude, most of them just drag. We're just like, oh gosh, why did we have this person on here? Say something, please.
Well, you were one of the first few guests that actually were on both segments. So congratulations.
Wow.
You're breaking the mold over here.
Cool.
So thanks again for being on.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. If I can fill a gap in your schedule anytime in the future, please let me know.
If we can get desperate with trying to fill in the show, we'll reach out.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, Caleb,
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Greg. Man, so much to talk about, really. And
Greg's got knowledge with a capital N, man. Like he brings the goods and he brings the brains. I got to hand it to the guy.
Yeah, for real. Well, if you're still hanging on the show, thank you so much. Hopefully that was extremely helpful. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on LinkedIn, join us on Facebook. Caleb, take us home.
Yeah. This edition of On the Margins Live was written and produced by Will Lopez and myself. Our co-producers are Mohini Kundu and Andrea Garcia Vargas. Video and sound production by Waylon Janowick and Rylan Harris. Graphic design by Paul Choi. Special thanks to our colleague Riddhi Shah, who's living. Riddhi, we're going to miss you. Thanks for supporting the show. Our next show is May 11th. Our guest will be Amber Sutter. Subscribe to my newsletter, On the Margins. You want to get that newsletter every week. So yeah, find that. There's a link probably in the comments. That's our show. Until then, I'm Caleb Newquist, and I'll be keeping it saucy out on the margins.